Put that way, it sounds so ridiculous.
Lightsaber
like it was
or
just
shirt.
a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I studied with Luke Skywalker and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. This week, we're taking 20 questions from our patrons all about The Mandalorian Season 3, so let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it to it, my dudes.
It's Tongs Day, am I right? Wait.
First up, Super Saiyan Spin asks if the Darksaber could be salvaged, and Damien Vonderhaar wonders if Hu Yang would be the one to repair it.
That just made me go down a rabbit hole of like, oh, wait, yeah, Hu Yang, I assume, would know about the Darksaber. He says he has an archive of every lightsaber ever built in his memory banks.
But this is a Darksaber.
I agree with you. But
Not a lightsaber.
Well, they do refer to it as a lightsaber several times throughout the Clone Wars and Rebels. So I do think it should be classified as a lightsaber. But because of the blade, they're like the Darksaber. So it is unique. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I wonder if Hu Yang helped build that. Or if Tar Vizsla went off and built that on his own.
I feel like it was meant to be taken as Tar Vizsla did this, but it would be interesting if Hu Yang helped.
Yeah, well, it's so different to every other lightsaber that I could see Tar Vizsla being like, I'm going to go off and build this on my own. And maybe Hu Yang still has records of it in his archives, but I just wonder how different it is. Like, we don't even know if it is powered by Kyber or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we should take it so literally that Hu Yang has records of every single lightsaber
That's
that
what
has
he said.
ever been. Does he have records of Rey's new yellow lightsaber?
Well, he hasn't made it to that point in the timeline yet.
Right. But, like, I'm sure there are other instances that.
Fair point. Like, okay, yeah, we know that he'll be in the Ahsoka series. He probably doesn't have a record of Ezra's, like, lightsaber blaster combo. Unless someone gave him schematics and he was like, ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah, I think he would definitely nerd out about a lightsaber like that.
It's a good point. Like, he probably doesn't have records of Luke's lightsaber, any lightsaber built after the Clone Wars. Like, we don't know where Hu Yang has been. Now we're going down a rabbit hole about Hu Yang. I am just excited to see him. But I do think he would probably potentially have the skills to fix it if someone thought to bring it to him. But I think the Darksaber is probably done for. I
do too. I've seen a lot of people say, Grogu could be the one to fix it and wield it down the line. I don't think he's thinking about that. I don't think, because Luke gave him the choice of lightsaber or Beskar shirt, and he chose shirt. Like, I think,
put that way, it sounds so ridiculous.
Lightsaber
like it was
or
just
shirt.
A t-shirt.
Yeah.
I studied with Luke Skywalker and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. He's like, lightsaber or t-shirt?
Yeah. I mean, Grogu is on his way to becoming a Mandalorian. So I don't think in his mind he's like, you know what, I'm going to rebuild that Darksaber and make a 2.0.
It's something I could see potentially happening because they do keep pointing out, like Din saying, oh, he didn't learn that from me. It's like, yeah, he learned it from Luke. So he has a little bit of both in him. But I agree that he seems to be far more interested in the Mandalorian path right now. I wish he could talk and tell us, but the way that the Darksaber was destroyed or damaged, I'm thinking that they are going to just set that aside. They don't need it anymore. But it also could have just been a thing that Gideon damaged it in the moment, and so Bo-Katan didn't need it, and he delivered that line of Mandalorians are nothing without their trinkets, and she proved him wrong. Mm-hmm. They could still rebuild it, and that does kind of seem like a Mandalorian thing to do, where they'll set something up and then kind of walk it back in the next season. I could kind of see that happening. I feel like a lot of that happened between seasons 2 and 3. We arrested Gideon. Oh, no, never mind.
He's back.
Din has the Darksaber. He'll give it to Bo-Katan. Like, yeah. a lot of that stuff just quickly got resolved. So, I don't know what the future holds for the Darksaber, but for now, I think it's probably been set aside.
I hope that it's, for what it stands for, the idea that it was destroyed, it feels like it would be cheapened if they just brought it right back. They could, but it can't really represent what it used to. You know, it can't represent whoever wins this blade in battle, you know, is going to rule Mandalore. It can't represent that anymore. So I had kind of guessed earlier in the season that it would get destroyed, but I was hoping that it would have been the Mandalorians to destroy it. And I know you struggle with the idea that Gideon was the one to do it.
I mean, that was yesterday, and this is today, and I'm beyond that now. Like, I do think that there's potential that they could rebuild it specifically to be like, and now it is a symbol of unity instead of a symbol of like, hey, I was the strongest, and so now I rule you. I think they could rebuild it into something new. I kind of like that idea.
It gives me a lot of Last Jedi vibes with the Skywalker lightsaber getting torn in half, and then it was rebuilt, but, you know, only for a little while. You know, Rey ultimately makes her own.
Yeah, honestly, the Darksaber, it does feel a little bit like Kylo Ren destroys his helmet, the lightsaber is destroyed, and then in the next movie, we're going to build them both back up. And it could potentially be like that.
Garrett McDowell asks why the Imperial Remnant are researching Force-sensitive clones if Palpatine has already been dead for 5 years.
Garrett's saying basically like, isn't this research a little bit too late? And I would say the answer is yes. Basically, from other stories, reference materials, it sounds like Palpatine, once he became Emperor, like immediately started researching into how to keep his life going through cloning. And it just never, ever worked out. We might be seeing that in the Bad Batch and other stories, but I think basically the Imperial Remnant, if Project Necromancer is about this cloning thing, they're doing their best and they're failing. We know that they do not succeed in what Palpatine wants or needs because he's still in that like body that's falling apart.
Yeah. Well, they probably are looking back at history and seeing everything that Palpatine did over the years from going from senator to emperor, and like them being like, yeah, him having the Force probably helped a lot with that. We should make clones with Force powers.
Well, I think, but I think Garrett is suggesting that Brindle Hux is specifically doing that research to help Palpatine, as if he knows.
To bring him back.
Yeah, which I still don't know what is going on there, because I just didn't get the sense that anyone knew. I don't think it was public information that Palpatine is still out there at the time of the First Order, because his like big announcement, the dead speak, even the First Order seemed like, wait, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll accept the help, I guess.
It's interesting to think about the fact that who was around when Palpatine died?
Just Vader and Luke, and maybe 2 Imperial Royal Guards like hiding behind the elevator, which were Tag and Bink in the in the Legends comics.
So, as we know, the Empire is all about being selfish and overly confident, and it would make sense that the rest of the Empire would be like, he's not dead. He's for sure coming back at some point, you know, like just overly confident that never really happened.
Yeah, just in deep denial.
Yeah.
I could see that Project Necromancer might be about creating Snoke, and so they didn't know about Palpatine. Maybe Palpatine helped them make Snoke, so then they have like this puppet leader that he is controlling. But then some books said that Snoke kind of just came to them from the unknown regions. I'm taking a lot of stuff that were set up in books, and I'm like, this very well might be overwritten by the show in the future. But for now, I'm trying to make it all line up, and I don't know, it's tough.
And we also know that Palpatine put in a lot of contingency plans and stuff like that for if and when he was taken out. And so I think all of that together may have caused people to be like, he's not gone forever though, right? Like once he does come back, he'll find out that I was doing this research for him, and then he'll put me in charge of his like right-hand man. I
do think some people know. I think there are a select few, And I could see Brindle Hux maybe knowing, and I'm basing a lot of the surprise in The Rise of Skywalker around Hux Jr., Armitage Hux. Brindle was always terrible to Armitage, so I could see him not telling Armitage about that. So there are justifications, I think, where some of the Imperial Remnant would know and just keep it secret.
It makes me think of the line that I think Kylo says to Hux about a clone army being better than what he's currently doing. I think that line feels juicier now.
A little bit, yeah. I think it does. And I should point out that Project Necromancer might not be about Palpatine or Snoke at all. I think that does make the most sense, but Project Resurrection in Battlefront 2 was about creating a new army through kidnapping children. Project Necromancer could be like phase 1 of that, where they're like, why don't we try a clone army? And it just doesn't work out.
Lynn Koyo asks if Gideon was truly able to create Force-sensitive clones of himself.
I doubt it.
Yeah, probably not, but we'll never know, I guess.
I think that's the truth, is that we're not going to find out. Gideon walked up and said, like, I cracked the code, I figured it out, and this batch of clones, they were going to have the Force. And it's like, you don't know that.
Yeah.
They were still in the tanks. I don't think they got out and started floating rocks. I think he was just, he's narcissistic. He thinks so highly of himself that he's like, I figured it out, and they were going to work, and now we'll never know, and he's just mad at Din.
Well, too, Pershing never got to finish his research, right? So I feel like he kind of half-assed it, like he called it in, phoned it in. He went through with making these clones without Pershing having finished his research to help him do so, and they probably weren't perfect.
He did say in episode 3 that the last batch was promising, and then like some Coruscanti person cut him off before he could finish the sentence. So it's possible they were getting close, but I don't think the Force works that way until proven otherwise by the show, and then I will adjust my thinking. But for now, I'm like, I don't think so.
Josh Gill, Spider-Man of Earth 1218, or Mappa, and Oncoming Storm 7 all ask if Gideon is truly dead, or was that a clone?
I think he's dead. I think he's gone. I don't think it was a clone.
He better be. I'm done with Gideon. Like, I loved him as a villain. I love the actor. I'm done. I don't want him to come back.
It's another thing that it feels like they could walk it back, and then I'll just be like, okay, you arrested him. Oh, no, he got away. You killed him. Oh, no, he survived. Like, I just want them to make a final decision on the character. So I think that image of him standing there screaming, I mean, he's wearing armor. He's doing all that. Like, I could see feasibly that he could survive, but I don't think he should.
Yeah, I mean, let's pave the way for a new big bad, or medium bad? I guess if we're saying Thrawn is the big bad, let's pave the way for someone new, like maybe Rey Sloane to pop up, or pave the way for some other cool Imperial characters to come in and do their thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, we'll talk about the future in the future of this video, but I could see maybe the Imperial Remnant, the Shadow Council as a whole, could be the medium bad, the mini bosses to get to Thrawn.
What are your thoughts on the mustache theory?
He saw a picture of Biggs Darklighter and he was like, I can't live up to that. What am I even doing with this thing? And he shaved it off.
Yeah.
Like, there are razors in space. He can shave.
Yeah. So the mustache theory is the Gideon that we saw in the finale, or in the last 2 episodes, did not have the mustache.
Right.
And also the clones did not have the mustache. So therefore, the Gideon that we saw die was a clone. Which I don't believe.
I don't buy that either.
I hope not. Please don't do that, Star Wars. Please don't. Diego Imanol and Ramona Flowers want to know what happened to Dr. Pershing.
I don't think he's dead physically. I think he's probably had his mind wiped. That was his fear going into the Mind Flayer, and then Elia Kane turned it up. I think he probably had his entire brain erased.
Ugh.
Which I don't know what that looks like, if he forgot how to, like, eat and feed himself, or if he just lost all of his memories. So I kind of see him as a blank slate, like a doll in Dollhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope he hasn't been killed, but at the same time, it seems like for as strongly as he got mind flayed, like, he's probably a vegetable at this point, if he's not dead.
I can see him being able to walk around like that. You're gonna wipe my mind, and to me, I relate that more to memories. So now that I'm thinking about Dollhouse, that show, I just feel like he's just kind of like walking around like, oh, cool, neat, like, what's that, what's this? He's Jack Skellington now.
He's probably super happy about his 9-to-5 boring office job.
They're like, you can still do data entry, so here you go. Oh, poor Pershing.
What would really be cool and would make Elia Kane even more of an evil character is if she made him like her personal assistant.
Yeah. We saw him just off screen in episode 5, like following her around with a data pad.
Yeah. Oh. Scotty Heron asks what our favorite moment of the season was.
Keller and Beck, easily.
That's a good moment. I don't know.
While you think, I'll just gush about that moment for a second, because it's one of those things where, we watched Jedi Temple Challenge, not as a joke, but it's Star Wars, and we were like, we'll watch the first episode. I'm sure it'll be cute. And the fact that it was coming out like in the middle of lockdown, it became a weekly ritual for us. I feel like we watched it every evening, probably after doing a stream of some kind. I remember we would just watch it at night, and we'd have a drink, and we'd each choose a team, and we would root for the team and like get way too invested in it. And that was just a fun little period watching that show. So then to have Ahmed Best reprise the role, and the way they teased it out, like, get him to Master Beck, get him to Kelleran, and we're like, wait, really? And like, my brain didn't fully connect those dots in the moment. I was like, I know that name. It's Jedi Temple Challenge. That's surprising. And I still was not ready for the doors to open it to be Ahmed Best. So that alone, like, had me over the moon. But then to see him be the Sabered Hand, which again is a joke from the show. Like, every episode he tells the droid, like, they used to call me the Sabered Hand. And she was like, you say it every day. Please stop. Like, it's a joke in the show, but it's not here. And he was so awesome with the lightsaber. Not to mention, he is a teacher. He would have been related to the younglings. Like, he would want to keep them safe. So it just felt like a perfect choice that I never would have thought of. And I loved it.
Yeah, and reading that article on StarWars.com about Ahmed Best and how he wanted to integrate like his martial arts training into his character of Kelleran Beck, and like his studies of like African art and symbols are shown like on his cloak and everything, so that all just like worked so perfectly.
Yeah, he got to put so much into the character, creating it for Jedi Temple Challenge, and then they translated that over into the show as well. And obviously just the Ahmed Best of it all, the justice for him as an actor, like getting another role for Star Wars fans to, I feel like, universally just celebrated and welcomed his return to Star Wars. And, articles were saying, oh, finally redemption for Ahmed Best. And it was like, no, like, this is a chance for Star Wars fans to treat him the way he always should have been treated. And that was just a great day on Twitter for once, where everyone was celebrating that moment. So that's like a top tier Star Wars fandom moment for me, not just in the series, but like as a fan.
Yeah. There's honestly too many Grogu moments to choose from. But I'm going to pick 2 moments because I got to have a Grogu moment. So Grogu saying yes and no in the suit, in the IG-12 suit.
Yeah.
Adorable. Hilarious. And then anytime Bo-Katan got to fight with the Darksaber, felt like my heart was so full in those moments when she saved Din, and like the first time she got to like fight with it again, and then when she beat Axe in that fight and just like got to ignite it in front of everybody. It just felt right.
Mm-hmm. I love that shot of her in the armor, like flying down to take on the Imperials, and she pulls it out and is leading the way. That's such a great shot and great moment. Totally agree with you there. And I would say probably my second favorite moment was Grogu stopping the fight between Axe and Woves and going, no. That was a powerful moment that made me tear up. So, and it's so goofy on paper, but the fact that they like landed that, Rick Famuyiwa's direction was great. The writing, setting it up as a joke and then paying it off as something important later was great.
It's so powerful too to have Grogu be the one to break them up, and it's almost like he's talking. It's basically like he is talking, and so it makes that moment feel more powerful. That like he is the one to step in and say no. Mm-hmm. Like this is not the way.
Yeah.
You two. Matt wants to know what the most surprising moment of the season was. Having Lizzo and Jack Black show up.
I was gonna say the same thing. I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Jack Black's voice when it was a far shot, and I was like, "Is that Jack Black?" And then it cuts closer, and then we were like, "Is that Lizzo? What is happening?"
That and there being a small enough wrist dart rocket thing to fit Grogu, like that whole part, I was like, "What?
Well,
they want him to."
It was like
darts?
Pretty big on his wrist. I think it was child size, but not his size.
I just thought that really part was so silly and like kind of shocked me a little bit. I was like, no, he doesn't need to throw darts.
From that episode, I remember being like, oh my God, when that bird vomited Ragnar Vizsla back up, I was like, oh, he's been in that tummy for like a day, a full day.
Ew.
Poor Ragnar.
Beskar armor really helps, man. Framed Citizen asks what our favorite new addition to the lore was.
I think probably the biggest thing that I am interested in is the amnesty program, which is overall new to Star Wars, but I felt like built very well off of the Aftermath trilogy and The Last Shot and everything we know about the New Republic up to this point. The Alphabet Squadron trilogy as well. I was like, yep, this tracks really well. It all makes sense. It's not perfect. Like, just the same way Last Shot introduces some ideas and then shows how they're not working. And so that all tracked.
Yeah, I really liked all that stuff too. We already talked a lot about Kelleran Beck, but having him show up and we finally get to know who saved Grogu from Order 66. That is... I am so happy that is behind us, and I'm so happy with how it all turned out.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that would be my favorite thing, too. My favorite new addition is having that answer, but since I already talked about Kelleran Beck plenty, but yeah, like having Kelleran Beck be out of this kind of canon gray area with Jedi Temple Challenge and be like, no, he was canon, and he did something very important. Yeah. He saved, like, this generation's most iconic character.
Mm-hmm. And then... other than that, since we did talk about it a lot, I'll say in the end, finding out that Mandalore can sustain plant life and
oh yeah, that was nice.
Can like officially regrow and rebuild itself, and the fact that even Bo-Katan had that line of like she didn't realize things could grow except for in those little pods. Mm-hmm. That was helpful for a lot of people, I think, for her to say that out loud, because like we all were kind of thinking that, like, oh, I thought that was the only way that this worked, but now we know that it's not. And
yeah,
yay.
And yeah, Mandalore's been like that for thousands of years, and the fact that it's finally coming back, and it's like, hey, you can find balance again, Mandalore. Mm-hmm. You just need room to grow.
Yeah. Kevin Dragos wants to know if the Imperial warlords know about Starkiller Base.
I'm gonna say yes. Like, this goes back to the Hux question and who knows about Palpatine or not, but the Empire started work on Starkiller Base pretty early on, like by the time of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is 5 years after Revenge of the Sith. Ilum is already being converted into Starkiller Base. So I think they had that plan for a long time. If the Empire knew then, I would assume the Imperial Remnant still knows about it and are probably still working on it as they transition into becoming the First Order.
Yeah, I agree. I think they know about it, or at least most of them do. Some of them may be being kept out of the loop, on purpose for whatever reason, but I think that's one of those little project names that has probably been floating around for a bit.
Yeah. They were like, let's call it Project Starkiller. And then they were like, that's kind of a goofy name. And they're like, we'll figure out something later. We'll get a better name afterwards.
Someone was like, oh, I love that video game. Cool.
Yeah. No, not that one. Not that Starkiller.
Oh. Hello. Ice asks how Gideon's defeat will affect Thrawn's plans to retake the galaxy.
Yeah, so I think that was an important line in the Shadow Council. Pelion says something about, like, oh, if they retake Mandalore, that will impede our efforts. It will be a problem. So, how? I don't know. My original theory, like, back in Season 2, when we heard that the planet was cursed and Bo-Katan was like, don't believe everything you hear, I was like, Thrawn's hiding there. He's got a base there. And I was close. Not quite.
So close.
The Empire was there, just not Thrawn. So I'm wondering if he's just going to use Mandalorian space as a staging ground, because it is a big area of space, and they could gather their forces there. Or maybe they're just like, a united Mandalore would be bad for us because they don't like us, and they would definitely fight us again.
Yeah, it's one thing leaving a planet like Navarro alone that's just trying to live like this peaceful city life. It's another thing to leave a planet like Mandalore and a culture like the Mandalorians as a whole, this like warrior culture. It's another thing to leave them alone and just be like, I'm sure they'll be fine,
Right.
and they'll never disagree with anything we do and come after us.
Yeah, we totally didn't like glass their planet, so they definitely won't have a vendetta against us. So I think that's probably the biggest issue, is just united Mandalorians would be a problem just because they would fight us. It's interesting you bring up the pirates, though, because I kind of forgot about them. And I don't know.
Did I bring up the pirates?
Yeah. Oh, well, like leaving Navarro alone.
Oh, yeah.
And the pirates were attacking Navarro this season. And I don't know why Gideon sent them there. I guess because there used to be an Imperial base. Maybe there was still research there. But I think it might be something that comes into play since Vane escaped, and it looks like he will be in Skeleton Crew. So that could be a continuing thread, the pirates and their relationship with the Imperial Remnant.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think Gideon's defeat is good for Thrawn.
I think so, too.
Like, I bet Thrawn's gonna hear that and be like, yeah, figures.
Yeah.
Oh, he was trying to make Force-sensitive clones? Good riddance. Like, we don't need that.
I don't need that drama.
No.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's not going to mourn the loss of Gideon. I think he will be annoyed that the Mandalorians have started to gather again.
Recovery Hacker wants to know our final feelings on the Armorer, and Ormappa asks what the season's message was regarding the Children of the Watch.
So I think that I treated the Armorer too harshly. I think I let my own personal biases and history affect how I viewed her character, because it never sat well with me that she exiled Din back in the Book of Boba Fett. And really, that was the one part, that was like the one thing she did that made me like kind of glare at her. Just be like, what are you up to?
Yeah.
Other than that, she seemed to be on the up and up. She just like, cared about the rules too much, but she wound up being cool. Like, I really started to change my tune around her when she accepted Grogu and was like, yeah, you're a Mandalorian. Come on inside and I'll make you a new piece of armor.
Yeah, but I'll drudge up some pretty traumatic memories while I'm at it.
That just seems to be what happens. Like, I don't know if that's her fault that everyone sits there and thinks of the worst day of their life while she makes them armor.
Yeah, I don't know. I had so many thoughts and feelings about the Armorer this season, and you're right. I think we projected a lot of what we wanted to see and hear into her performance. And, you know, I was so sure that she was a spy, or I was so sure that she was, you know, doing things in a way that was kind of nefarious, and like she had ulterior motives the whole time. And like it just didn't turn out that way, and that's fine. And I guess ultimately the children of the Watch, the message there is that like they're just different kinds of Mandalorians, and they should all be able to work together for a common goal, which is like to reclaim their home world.
Yeah. I mean, I think the message of them was that they became more accepting. They became less rigid. They decided that, oh, if you take your helmet off, you're still a Mandalorian. Like, just because these rules work for us doesn't mean we have to make everyone else follow those same rules. I think that works on several levels, whether you're talking about humanity as a whole, or religion, or a fandom, and being like, oh, there's only one set of movies you're allowed to like, and if you like that other set, then you're not a Star Wars fan. Like, that is Din Djarin telling Bo-Katan, the princess of Mandalore, that she's not a Mandalorian because she took her helmet off. Like,
yeah, it's funny. While I had COVID, I spent a lot of time on the couch watching TV, watching a lot of non-Star Wars stuff, and it just so happened to be a lot of true crime documentaries, and I watched that Waco, Texas cult documentary, and I think that like really sent me down a rabbit hole of being like so sure that the armorer was bad, because was kind of like positioned to be this cult leader. And
I'm imagining you having a fever, like, she's up to no good.
I was down there with my red string and all my pens.
She's the spy.
Like, yeah, and that was just me overthinking things and probably watching too much true crime cult related stuff. And I'm not upset anymore that the fact that it didn't pan out that way. I'm just kind of like, I feel to my core that this would have been a better story had the armorer been up to no good. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
But we're going to kind of talk about this later. But a question down the line asks, you know, how do you balance the analysis that we do, which can sometimes, stray into over-analysis? How do you balance that with also just accepting the story that is actually being told? So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Starkasm wants to know why Din is continuing to stick to the helmet rule. Yeah,
it's something that I really was hoping he would stop. Especially, and I didn't catch this on my first watch, but people pointed out, Ragnar's creed no longer mentioned leaving the helmet on and never showing his face again. So if the Children of the Watch are like, you don't have to do this anymore, why is Din still doing it? Maybe it's just a comfort thing, but I was really, really hoping he would take his helmet off, and then, like, Pedro Pascal might be more frequently in the show.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that that's going to be the case going forward into season 4. But yeah, it would have been nice for him to just take his helmet off at the very end there, when it's just him and Grogu. Like, Grogu is his official adopted son now. I guess that's still against the helmet rule to, like, take your helmet off and around direct family, but, like, that feels like it should be the case. You should be able to take it off around Grogu now.
Yeah, Grogu's face is out. Like, Din should be able to also. And, like, I don't think the helmet rule exists anymore so much. Like, I think that to some people, I think the armorer is, like, walking the way of the Mandalore, to me, means keeping my helmet on, but she's no longer going to enforce that to anyone else. So I think Din should be able to take his helmet off. And then I'm like, maybe he will in season 4, but the fact that he didn't in this season, it makes it just a little odd, if that's what their plan is. But maybe he's just comfortable in there and he needs to test the waters, get used to it.
Yeah.
I still hope that we work towards that, but...
This goes back to the armorer for me, I think, because the armorer did exile him for taking it off, and he went through all this to like get her blessing again. Okay, so they all worked together. They retook Mandalore, and it's like, yeah, the helmet rule isn't part of the creed anymore, so it just feels like he's still affected by what the armorer did to him specifically.
Honestly, I think that's a great point. And if we're definitely dipping back into over-analysis and the exact stuff that we were talking about before, but if we want to talk about, religious trauma and him being raised in a cult, it's hard to let that stuff go when you are no longer bound by them anymore. It's still just like, yeah, but that's how my life was. So as much as I want him to move past that, and as much as I want Pedro Pascal to basically be like Katie Sackhoff, where it's like sometimes helmet is on, sometimes it's off. It's just whatever the situation calls for. Mm-hmm. I can see why Din would not be at that point yet.
Yeah. Oh, that must have been a big itch.
Hilo had a big ol' itch. Can you lie down? Can you lie back down?
Kyle Barrett asks if we'll meet Din's former master in the future.
That was interesting, the armorer saying, hey, you have to now take Grogu on his journeys, just as your master once did with you. I could maybe see us doing more Din flashbacks or something, but I don't know. I don't necessarily think that was a tease that we will meet that former master. I think it was just a way of the armorer saying, this is how Mandalorian tradition is, and you take your apprentice on journeys.
Yeah, this is something I'm not super thrilled about. The idea that there's an apprentice and a master in Mandalorian culture. They're just copying it from the Jedi.
Well, I mean, that's kind of interesting because they, thousands of years ago, ran into the Jedi, and they were like, oh, these sorcerers have powers that we need to combat, so let's make this armor, let's make new weapons and trinkets, and now we can fight them on even ground. And maybe we should also train the next generation the same way they do. Like, to me, that's kind of interesting that they might be copying the Jedi.
Yeah. But I wonder, too, if it's more about, like, because Din himself was a foundling, is she speaking more of, like, whoever it was that brought him in? Is that just automatically the foundling's master to the master and apprentice relationship? Or was someone like, I'll train him?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like because Din had to formally announce, like, I'm adopting Grogu, and then she was like, okay, he is your apprentice now and no longer a foundling, I'm gonna guess that it is something that someone has to say, I would like to train this person. And that not necessarily that one Death Watch person that saved Din from that battle. I think he was just rescuing a kid. And wasn't like flying away going, and you're my son now. And Din's like, I just lost my parents, dude.
Aww.
Like, slow it down.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I keep bringing this back to the armor, and I promise I'll stop at some point, but I just feel like she's just making stuff up, and everyone just agrees with it. Like, it's fine. And the audience is like, yeah, okay, sure.
Sometimes I feel that way, but now that I feel like I've got my bearings on what the show actually wants to say with the character, I think she is just the exposition machine to say, this is what Mandalorians do. So now the audience knows, and now Din and Grogu are going on court-mandated adventures, which I think is the best.
Robert Bush and Sean Room want to know if we'll see more from the Mythosaur in the future, and Ben wants to know if Grogu will be the one to tame it.
A lot of people are wondering because, like, Grogu looked into the water, and then we went down and saw the Mythosaur open its eyes. Was that Grogu connecting with the Mythosaur? Did he sense it down there, or was he just looking in the water? What's the deal? I took it as more just the Mythosaur is down there, and it's waking up, kind of the same way that the Mandalorian culture is back on Mandalore, revitalizing itself. I didn't take it as Grogu connecting with it, but I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that's wrong.
I think the way that Grogu connected with the Rancor, I think that there is potential for him to have a connection with any large beast like that, especially if he's, trying to calm it down and save lives.
Yeah. He definitely seems to have a connection with nature. I mean, how many times have we seen him playing with animals like the rock creature or the Rancor? He calms it down.
The frogs.
I mean, he eats those too. but yeah, like, I think that that's part of his growing up. I mean, he ate the eggs, but then the frog eggs, and then eventually saw one hatch and was like, oh.
Yeah.
And was really interested in it as a living being, not as I'm going to eat that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they have really done a lot to show how much Grogu loves animal life. So I absolutely, even though I didn't read it like that in the moment, I can see that being very true.
Yeah. And I do think we'll see more of the Mythosaur in the future. I did think it was strange that we didn't see it come out, but it was like brought up so late in the game that I guess it makes sense that wouldn't happen yet. But the whole thing of like Bo-Katan seeing it down there and like knowing it was down there, and then we saw it again, but just it's still down there. It feels like it's not ready to come out yet, which is fine.
Yeah.
We can all...
It's down there with a broom and it's knocking up on the ceiling like, all those Mandalorians are back and they're making a ruckus. I'm trying to sleep.
The Mythosaur is not ready to come out of its closet yet, and that is fine, and we respect it for that.
So I think that The Mandalorian as a series has kind of a cycle of setup and payoff, where if we include the Book of Boba Fett as one of the full seasons, we got the setup of the Darksaber really in season 1. But I would say it was explored a lot more in season 2, and then the payoff of it was in season 4. Season 3 of the show, but 4 overall. So I expect that they are establishing the Mythosaur as something that will continue to pop up, and we might see it like fully resolve in season 5 or so.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things that might show up in Filoni's movie, like Boba Fett will come in on his Rancor, and Bo-Katan will come in on the Mythosaur, and Cobb Vanth will come in on a Krayt Dragon, and we'll all just have our cool, big creatures that we're riding and going into battle with.
I can see that.
Shaq Fu wants to know how to balance overthinking analysis with legitimate criticism. Well, we are struggling with that on a day-to-day basis, so we're in this together, folks.
Well, I mean, I think that sometimes you don't know what the full story is until we reach a finale. That felt true to me, at least, where I was like, okay, I thought that they were treating the armor kind of shifty in the previous episode, but they confirmed, like, no, she is not. She is on the up and up as far as we can tell. And so I just shifted my viewpoint of like, I was putting my own personal thoughts and feelings onto this character when they weren't necessarily going that hard at it. I do think that, we pulled stuff from the text of the show. Bo-Katan called it a cult several times, and in the real world, cults are not good. So I think that had everyone on edge. Maybe we were just judging all that a little too harshly, or maybe Bo-Katan was judging them too harshly.
I think both.
Yeah, that she may have been in the wrong to call them a cult, and we took her at her word. But, I think that it just comes down to, well, A, not letting your adjustments make you angry. Like, when I saw that, okay, I was wrong about X, Y, and Z, I didn't get angry about it. There are things, though, that I think are legitimate criticisms of, if this is the story you wanted to tell surrounding like the Darksaber, I think that there was a more effective way to tell it. It's just my opinion. I'm not mad about it. But when Bo-Katan gets the Darksaber in episode 6 on a technicality and everyone else like acts and everyone are like, yeah, I guess. Like, that's how it felt. And you want that moment to feel bigger. And then to have the Darksaber I felt like they built it up pretty well of Bo-Katan saying, like, if I don't have this, I can't lead. She said that in episode 7. She should make the choice to say, you know what, I don't need this thing, and I will put it away, instead of the villain destroying it and making that choice for her. That stuff like that bugs me. Like, making Bo-Katan passive in that moment instead of active, that just, I feel like that is a legitimate criticism.
Yeah. Well, as far as, I want to just go back to something I thought of when you said Bo-Katan herself called it a cult. I think that was just to show that, like, that's one side. Bo-Katan is really struggling somewhere here in the middle. And then the other side is Axe and the rest of the Mandos basically working as bounty hunters for random people, like taking jobs and turning their culture into just a job. So, like, there's a whole spectrum here that I think Bo-Katan was just really struggling with. As far as how to balance everything with analysis, criticism, I think seeing this finale helped me with that, because it reminded me that this show is simple. This show is, like, simple, straight to the point, like silly Star Wars a lot of the times. And it reminded me to just, like, take a step back and be like, this is a space fantasy with a space cowboy and his magic baby. Like, it's... Sometimes you get so wrapped up in the details and wanting to, like, put meaning behind everything, and you just gotta, like, take yourself out of it for a minute and say, you know, like, let me use my wide angle lens here, see the big picture. And honestly, it's just about, like, self-regulating that stuff, like going in and saying, I need to take a step back, reevaluate what this show is and what it's trying to say, and, like, not think too deeply about it.
So yeah, we were kind of coming off of Andor when this show started, and that was a series that we analyzed real deep. And so I think maybe I didn't adjust to going into The Mandalorian. And by the way, when we say that The Mandalorian is simple and silly, like, that's not an insult. That is, it's just along the same lines as A New Hope, which has simpler themes and is very silly. Like, that's the way George Lucas designed it. And so The Mandalorian is along those same lines. And I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling at this point.
It feels like going into the Clone Wars and comparing something like the Mortis arc to the D-Squad arc, or something along those lines. You know, there are sillier arcs of the Clone Wars, and then there are, like, some really highbrow stuff that you really have to think about. Yeah,
and, you know, I think Mandalorian does that too, where sometimes it does some very symbolic stuff. I mean, I think if we jump back to the Book of Boba Fett, everything with his vision quest, that was very symbolic. The Rancor being a symbol for Boba Fett, I'm like, yeah, it's not silly all the time.
Yeah.
It's not simple all the time. But I do think that this season was telling a more simple story, and we probably overanalyzed it. But yeah, my whole thing is to just say, like, all right, when I was wrong about something, I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm not upset about it. I just, like, adjusted my thinking and be like, okay, the armor is cool. I will stop being so sus of her all the time.
And I will not.
And some story decisions that they made where I'm like, I think that could have been better. Like, I do have my legitimate criticisms, but I will voice them and be done and move on. And I know when we watch that season finale again, I'm gonna just watch it for what it is, and love it.
It'll be so much better on a second watch, because we'll be able to enjoy it instead of sitting there waiting for the pin to drop, you know, like,
that's true,
something crazy to happen.
And also, I should point out, like, I do feel like I've been critical of the episode, more critical than probably our fans are used to from us, but I liked the episode. There were so many things that happened in it where I was like, this is all great. It's just that some of the big moments fell a little flat for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think they will the next time I watch it.
It's funny, I'll see people on like Instagram and say that like, oh, if you liked it, why are you talking so much about it? And it's like, that's what we do. That's our job.
Yeah.
Zeb Weasel, Rainman MP, Brandon Madigan, and Ben all ask if season 3 could have been the series finale.
Could have been, yeah, but it's not. I mean, like, I never got that feeling. I definitely felt like it closed off the season and maybe even like the first 3 seasons. But to me, it just symbolizes like we're going to shift gears going forward. But I mean, I do know, like Jon Favreau said, I've already written season 4. So like I had that expectation that this would not be the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think because the episode ended on such a happy note, like it was kind of like a happily ever after for everybody, that's what made it feel like a series finale. But I mean, Grogu and Din were basically told by the armorer, good job, now go on your court mandated adventures. And so like if this were a true series finale, I feel like if Din was going to settle down somewhere, he would have done it with a lady friend, maybe Bo-Katan, maybe the lady from
Sorgan.
From Sorgan, I forget her name, but like
Omera?
There just would have been more to it if it were going to be a series finale, and like Grogu would have been officially, like named a Mandalorian or something like that. It just, there's still a lot of open-ended things.
Yeah, I don't think we would have had that epilogue of Din going to Carson Teva and saying like, hey, I want to work for you. This also, all these comments reminds me of season 2, because we kind of already went through this where we were like, wait, hold on. Is that the series finale of like Din got this child to Luke Skywalker and he's walking away with him, and now they're like, that felt so big and emotional, and we were like, is this series over? And then we got the Book of Boba Fett teaser, and we were like, but what about the Mandalorian? That's coming back, right? So yeah, like I feel like I went through that in season 2. So season 3, I'm like, yeah, I think we have wrapped up like the Moff Gideon arc of the show, and we've gotten the Mandalorian people back to Mandalore. But I definitely think that things are easily going to continue moving forward.
Yeah. And like so much of Star Wars content that we've gotten aside from this show and the sequel trilogy, we know what's happening down the road. So like we have kind of an end goal in mind for a lot of stories, books, comics, all that stuff. But for this, we have no idea where this is headed.
Yeah.
For these characters.
Especially because it's going to end like in the middle of that time period between the Empire and the First Order.
Yeah. So that also makes it feel like the end of every season could be the end, period. Grogu's wrinkly head, Simon Hodgett, and Amit Zohar want to know if season 4 will be Rangers of the New Republic. Well, no, it'll be independent contractors of the New Republic.
Yeah, that's Triad of the Force, shout out. We can put their little graphic up. Their professionally made graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see them basically combining that idea for a series with The Mandalorian and being like, okay, let's just make Grogu and Din Rangers of the New Republic. And
it makes Jon Favreau's statements about already having written season 4, it makes that make a lot more sense.
That's
too.
True.
Like it seems like him saying, yeah, I've already got season 4 written, now sounds like, yeah, we're just using Rangers of the New Republic, which was already done, and adding a few little twists to it.
He just did a find and replace with Cara Dune and put Din Djarin in.
Yeah.
And boom.
Done.
But yeah, that's basically what I think we're going to get is I'm hoping a stronger focus on Din and Grogu as the stars and heart of the show, because I feel like they made room for a lot of other key players in season 3, which I don't mind, but I did kind of miss just the two of them going to some planet, having adventures together instead of going to like Jack Black and Lizzo's planet and then splitting up. I like having them as a team. I loved having them as a team in the finale, like fighting the Praetorian Guards together.
Yeah, I did love seeing Bo and Din have to work together, and like seeing their different ways of like working and talking to people and how they kind of like had to mesh that together into one. But anyways, yeah, I'm excited to see Rangers of the New Republic. I don't know about you guys. Josh Thompson and Chris Ray ask what we think we can expect from season 4.
And I meant to say this. I don't think the next season of the show will be called Rangers of the New Republic. I just think it'll be The Mandalorian season 4.
They're going to be using the stories that they had for that show in this new season, probably.
That I could definitely see happening. So I kind of expect that, I touched on this before, but instead of Moff Gideon, I think it would be cool if he had to face off against the Shadow Council. Like, he might not know that's who he's facing off against, but if he is just sent on these missions by the Adelphi Rangers, which Carson Teva said he was part of the Adelphi Rangers, then I think he's going to continue to run into the Imperial Remnant. We will still be building towards Thrawn, even though he will be revealed in Ahsoka by that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been talking about Rangers of the New Republic so much. We're going to probably get that main story in season 4. And then maybe we'll get a season 5 to like really wrap up Din and Grogu's story. Not to jump that far ahead, but I think that's kind of where we're headed.
I mean, who knows how long the show is going to run until that movie happens. And then Dave Filoni and Favreau suggested that, you know, this movie, this big climactic event, they were talking about it before Celebration, but they were like, there could be a big thing, but that doesn't mean it has to be the end for all these stories. They can continue on after that. The X-Files movie was in like season 5, and then they just kept on going.
Right.
So.
But yeah, I hope we see a lot more of the New Republic, and I hope we get to go back to Coruscant and just like really dig into what is going on with the New Republic right now. And yes, I want Din and Grogu to be in it a lot, but it'll just be them going on their court-mandated journeys.
Yeah, they're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They're going on journeys and also helping the New Republic. I would love it if they did kind of a healthy balance of 1 week is just a weird new planet with new characters, and then the next episode is a little more connected to whatever the larger story is, and maybe they go on an adventure with Sabine, and then they go on another adventure the next week, which is all new. Just having like a little balance between the familiar and still growing what Star Wars is.
Yeah. And I am excited to see what we get as far as Thrawn goes in Ahsoka season 1, so that we can build on that in the next season of The Mandalorian. And we will, you know, have seen his face, which would be great. And we'll know kind of like where he stands. And then we'll find out, hopefully in season 4, what the conflict is between Thrawn and the rest of the New Republic and Mandalore.
Yeah. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.